Okay, Pezza. Well, an interesting few days for cricket generally across the globe, across the lands. Obviously, New Zealand, Pakistan, 3 overs left, 1 wicket needed, 15 runs. Oh, a little bit dark. Let's just call it evens here, guys. SCG test, 25 days of rain in the history, about 5 times more than any other city in the country. But we keep playing it then because it's nice and, a bit of Sydney stuff, but New South Wales gear, mafioso gear as well. But what I'm most interested in, Pezza, is, and we've been saying this for a decade or more, cricket is an individual sport masquerading as a team game. So how did you feel when Pat Cummins brought in Usman Khawaja on 195 not out? Were you a bit like, okay, or were you like, oh well, I suppose he wants his team to win? Which one of those two did you go for?
I was aroused. That
felt like a separate question.
Yeah, I wasn't watching the game.
What happened?
Yeah. I was aroused. I mean, it wouldn't have got more noncy than to have gone out and had Usman Khawaja score 5 runs than to have called him in.
Yeah.
Like, you'd expect that kind of behaviour from other places that play cricket, and I'm not going to name them. Like Australia loves a stick, but we like to alpha stick. We don't stick for personal glory and gain. And I tell you what, like on a serious level, the way Australia fucked up getting into the World Test Championship final last cycle, when it was just a question of over rates, they could have literally just bowled a spinner at one point in the game. I reckon Cummins is looking at that going, if I become an indoor cricket nonce, I don't know why I have to bring indoor cricket into it, but like send Usman Khawaja out there for 5 runs, everyone stands and applauds, then brings them in, and we don't manage these points on by a matter of minutes. We don't win this game by a matter of minutes. Go over to India, 4-0, one up the bum, no harm done, Axar Patel. You'll be looking back to that moment. So I was horny and I'm fine with it.
It also would have been one of those ones where Renshaw would have ended up somehow on like 32 because he just kept like farming the strike, and like it would have taken Khawaja like 17, 18, 22 minutes, not 20 or 15, specifically those numbers to get it, and it would have been a real tease job. Pez, I think we've got a game on here, and I say that because like Sydney often has done this thing where it rains and when it rains in the last match of the summer, which is almost always a dead rubber, and people start going back to work. And so if it rains on one of those days, people are like, cricket's over. Cricket season's done. I've already lost that 10-day window that I care about this sport. But then not consistently, but like quite often, probably more than any other ground in the country in recent years, Sydney actually turns out to be a fucking great game that goes into the last session where there's been amazing wins. I'm thinking Graeme Smith, broken hand. I'm thinking Michael Clarke, 3 wickets and an over. I'm thinking, Pakistan and Hussey and Siddle scored some runs that time, and then Bollinger and Horrocks fucking got a few wickets. Like in the last few years, some amazing stuff has happened in Sydney, and I can see this happening again where I'm sort of looking at the scores here. South Africa, I'm sort of looking at the scores. I don't look at scores. I'm side-eyeing scores. South Africa are 6 for 149. Now, they're going to get bowled out for under 200 again, and I think Australia might just declare straight away. They might concede their third innings and go, hey, South Africa, do you want to chase 280 to win? And we're going to have about 70-ish overs, I reckon, to win the game. You can do the same if you want it. And can Australia take 6-7 wickets in the final session? I say yes. Anyway, that's my prediction of the game. How are you seeing it panning out thus far?
That's interesting. So you're saying if they sort of seed their innings, then South Africa will be, will have a carrot dangled. And the dangled carrot will cause a sort of an approach that might bring some wickets. It's not the way Australia does things, like that would take some imagination. I know they did against Pakistan. Yeah. But that would be sort of like radical imagination from an Australian perspective. That'd be the sort of thing you'd expect from a Brendan McCullum outfit.
Okay.
Australians don't want to go near losing anything to their detriment. How do I say it panning out? Well, the first thing on the rain part here goes is a lot of sledging of Sydney over the last couple of days, months, years, decades, vis-a-vis its rain and its subtropical climate at this time. And there's a lot of...
A-League Grand Final's been there.
Yeah, that's right. And general authoritarian stance.
Yeah.
But Like, and there's a lot of hard statistics to suggest that, gee, there's a lot of cricket lost in Sydney, and gee, that's really, really frustrating. Notwithstanding that, I put it to you, he goes, that this last session of play that we saw today is comfortably the most captivating session this series. And the reason that's the case is because Australia aren't playing against a human opposition. They're playing against the greatest construct, which is time. And only Sydney can provide that. You know, like, people are sledging Sydney for rain. Like, rain has made this game interesting. Australia's playing against the world record line in swimming now.
Love it.
You know,
Love
like,
it.
it is Sydney is Gary Hall Jr., you know, and Cummins is Ian Thorpe. It's fucking Thorpe and Hall here. I haven't seen the forecast tomorrow. It could be an absolute stinker, but nevertheless, you know, we got to see Cummins fucking round the wicket bumpers and Yorkers. The bush horse was fucking snarling again. It was a dead old wicket, and South Africa was shit. That helped, but it was something.
When Tiger Woods was at his peak, he wasn't playing against the field; he was playing against the course, and that's what I'm seeing here. I love the swimming analogy of just world record chasing, and I love the idea now that Australia just like, okay, South Africa, whatever, like this whole summer, like basically rest of world except for India and England away, but that's basically it. And now I'm looking at like how badly can South Africa fuck this up? Because I think it's going to be like 6-7 wickets in the final session. Can Australia do it? And I'm seeing enough already in the deck where it's like, South Africa aren't good enough to defend that for 70 overs probably. But you're right, mate. In a summer where Australia has not lost a session, they've barely lost an hour or not won an hour. Having Cummins go round the wicket to hit like Janssen in the ribs and then get like Zondo with that Yorker. Fuck that is some high level, and that makes me think, fuck, Australia's good, and that's a turning point in my mindset this summer, rather than like everyone else's shit and this is the end of the game. Australia's good, and when Australia's trying to beat the course, they're trying to beat the time space continuum. Now I'm into it.
Yeah.
Now I'm into it. One day left of cricket this summer.
100%. They've decided, look, we need to give the fans something. We need to give them some kind of competition. Let's turn this game into a stall gift race. You know, let's have staggered starts. We'll stagger our own start. I don't know what that analogy means for the opposition vis-a-vis rain, but there is that clip where Kathy Freeman comes from zero, she got 0 meter start, and she fucking runs down a bunch of hapless people, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
And I think Louise Savage was in that race as well, just in the in one of the outside lanes. That's incredible in itself.
All yours.
Yeah.
All yours, Alan.
Jeez.
So I thought it was a fucking pretty cool last session, and like, good that the bowlers had a challenge. You know what I mean? Like, the bowlers are racing against time to make something happen. It wasn't just blokes just blasting South Africans everywhere. So that was fine. I thought South Africa were ordinary. I do have notes here, but one of my notes is actually Siri accidentally picking up me sort of barking at my children to eat their food. It actually says, like, I've got all these other notes about Khawaja, Hoff, the catch, and then it says, so you don't want your food. It's ready to go to bed. Quite hungry. Okay. So
I mean, that's a sort of a combination of Captain Grumpy and New Age. You know, that sort of border to Cummins era, isn't it? Of sort of dad stuff, legacy. Who's in charge here? Let them know you're there. Alan Border's telling Craig McDermott, if you don't fucking eat your vegetables, you're on the next plane home. That's not exactly what he said, but
It is quite concerning that my parenting is being picked up by Siri and recorded. But it's funny when you mention Alan Border. Just back to the Cummins and Khawaja thing. Like, at the start of the day, they had AB on comms. They asked him, and he was like, "Oh, I would have thought Pat would be pretty keen to have a bowl by now." That was it. Most other people are sort of going, well, on the one hand, it's good to reward Khawaja. He'd be walking around the change rooms. Khawaja's like, nah, he's not going to do it to me. Blah blah blah. AB just like, it's time to have a rock and roll.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, Pez, like, okay, so Janssen and Harmer at the crease, and it's probably going to take Australia 20 overs tomorrow to take 4 wickets. Let's just say that. Okay. That would leave 76 overs left in the day. Now, in that 20 overs, let's say they score 50 runs. That will mean they will be 275 runs behind Australia, and there'll be 76 overs left. Why would Australia bat again? I think Australia's going to concede their third innings. I mean, that's a very I've given the parameters that I liked for my to fit my narrative, but I just think that I think we're going to see a succession of a conceding of the third innings just to give Australia as much time as possible, because South Africa ain't scoring 275 on a day 3.5 wicket given the rain when they haven't scored over 200 since the late 90s.
Am I maths wrong vis-a-vis follow-ons here? Like, isn't it 200?
What? 200's a follow-on.
Yeah. And so what are they?
Yes. Yeah, sorry. You're right. Yeah. Okay. Well, no, you're right. Sorry. You're right. So I hadn't even considered that because I just forgot follow-on was a thing ever since, sports science and, Laxman and Dravid, etc.
No, I like when you originally said it. I was like, well, if we give him a carrot to win, then maybe we'll be able to knock these cunts over. I just...
Well, why don't you just like alpha the shit out of them, just not even enforce a follow-on, just actually concede the innings and be like, go on then.
Yeah.
I dare you. I dare you.
Or do a sort of ultimate like under 11s non-stuff and like let Kawaja score 5 runs then cherry him off the field. Oh, you got 200 from I don't know.
It's like when someone gets like their third wicket in a row over like 2 games. And it's like, that's a hat trick.
Yeah.
It ain't.
Get that ankle bracelet.
Especially one of those was a run out. That catch from Steve Smith, that was a good square up from Harmer's one. Both of them are out for me. I can see why they're not. I don't know what rule needs to change necessarily. It's just like for me, it's just out. Like, and if you watch it in real time, I think you probably need to factor that in a little bit. You can freeze frame whatever you want, but it's just out. Like for me, it's just out. As was Harmer's off Labuschagne the other day. It's a fucking unbelievable effort. But you can freeze frame it. And it's like, okay, well, I see part of the ball on the ground, even though like his fingers are split, so part of the ball is going to be touching the ground despite his hand being under the ball. That's for me. Nothing's going to change. I don't think you even need to change the rule necessarily, because I think it would be fucking absolute chaos if a game was decided by that, when you can literally freeze frame. Like that's how Twitter will end. And you should also base all your decisions about what Twitter's reaction is going to be. But it's just it's kind of I suppose it's upsetting in the sense like it's just unbelievable skill, and it's like not out. Like how hard is it to get out sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's like it's important to say that I think the law was applied correctly in both circumstances. Yeah. I think it was applied more correctly in this one than Harmer's one. I thought Harmer's one was more out, but then it starts to get into like more fucking nuanced noncery there, like because Harmer's one was dealing with the ground a lot more. Like Smith to me looked like he took his catch well above the grass. Like I mean controlled it in his hand, but then he uses his weight heading into the ground. He then uses the ground to basically balance himself, and I'd imagine that's where they've got a problem, even though he's holding the ball the whole time. I completely agree with you. I think both catches are out, but it's an issue with the law, just like all the non-striker man-cad run-out shit. So I think the law's wrong.
I think that's exactly my point. What you make is like when you look at it freeze frame by freeze frame, it's like, okay, he's actually using the weight of the ground to secure the ball. But then you watch it in real time, and it's like he has not done that in any way. It's just it's like it's physics. Anyway, I think we're both agreeing with ourselves. Should we just get into hashtag ASKTGC before we get into day 5 here, Pez?
Oh yeah. Do you have any words for AGAR, ASHTON AGAR? I see a lot of potential with it. Watching ASHTON AGAR made me appreciate Nathan Lyon's accuracy. I got to say, which is nothing against ASHTON AGAR. He's probably just a mortal, but it's just that ability. Like it just makes you appreciate how regularly Nathan Lyon, whatever you want to say about his lines or where he lands it or the amount of spin he gets or whatever, fuck, he puts it on a 20-cent coin. Although he did get pumped for 1,000 times today, but just generally speaking.
I thought actually my feeling was that AGAR was fine, and it must be a challenge given that he averages 45 in Test cricket. It probably says a lot about the wickets that he's played on a little bit, but like given that even on commentary they were saying like in white ball cricket they're like you got to bowl 6 different balls in a row, and Lyon's skill is like just same ball over and over and over again. And what it actually made me think about was Steve O'Keefe was a really good bowler, and he might even still be playing for Australia had he been given more opportunities, which I think broadly speaking is probably his own fault in lots of ways, but he would be still a big asset. I think if he played more tests, he's probably still playing now, and he's going to the India tour. That's what I was thinking when I was watching AGAR, and AGAR bowled fine, and he may have a role to do tomorrow. But I think missing Stark in this game with their foot marks, I know that bowled a little bit around the wicket, and there's enough there for line maybe, but I think Australia would be heavy favourites if there was some Mitch Stark foot marks to play. Hashtag ASKTGC from Jimby Fan Club. Hashtag ASKTGC. This summer's numbers cast my mind back to when I was first introduced to Australian Test summer, the 2006-7 Ashes series. I was a mere 7-year-old at the time, but still remember the absolute dominance Australia displayed in what was to be a 5-0 whitewash. It was common for Australia to declare with over 500 runs, and it seemed Ricky Ponting just never got out. As every game that summer played out the same, I just assumed things would continue moving forward. But with Warney, McGrath and JL retiring at the end of the series, it seemed Australia were never the same. I began to get confused when the Aussies were bowled out for less than 400, and heaven forbid even losing a game. It just didn't make sense. This summer has been very nostalgic for me in this sense. The comfort of knowing we will post a ridiculous score with a couple making tons just feels right. And with the exception of Boland v Hazelwood, the 11 is fixed, much like the days of old. At last, I feel safe. Thoughts?
Oh, just couldn't agree more, really. I mean, I think we spent a lot of time trying to separate some of the structural issues between maybe the team that the 06, that era had to play against and what's happening now. I mean, we're just playing against guys now that don't want to be here and probably get paid 5% of what the Aussies do. But that doesn't matter because I'm just full of fucking leftover ham and beers and whatever the fuck else and air conditioning. And I'm just letting those numbers wash over me like I'm Neo sucking off numbers or whatever the fuck was said the other day.
I'm absolutely full of air conditioning, mate. It's hot. I feel good. Australia's winning. Hey, day 5 tomorrow. I think it's going to be good. If you're in Sydney, why not have a look at it? It's a Sunday. Just get yourself down to church, enjoy the Sabbath, if that's what that is, and then go and watch Nathan Lyon take 8 for tomorrow. Yeah. See you tomorrow.